sweatshirt, and I don't know all the words to Fly Eagle Fly, but he assured me we can still be friends as we welcome back worshipful master, our worshipful brother Edmond Freeman. And this is the best part of getting to say this, brother Ed. Past master. How does that
Oh,
feel?
it feels great. It's such a great feeling, relief, and all of that, right? Encompasses a lot of things, but yeah, it just feels great. You know,
Nice.
that lift off your shoulders. It's
It's called the world. It's off your shoulders, and now
it's amazing.
your back don't hurt.
Amazing. Yeah,
We're
yeah,
gonna
definitely back on the hurt. That's the best way to that's the best way to classify that. Back on earth. Yep.
so we'll get back to Earth and get into his year in the East, but just a quick reset. If you missed it last year, 2025, you were part of one of my favorite episodes, one that I got a lot of feedback on, honestly. Our
Nice.
Mastering Your Trestle Board, where Ed joined a panel of some cohorts here in the Grand Lodge of the District of Columbia, two other brothers, and kind of fielded questions on how to successfully plan, look at some leadership models, some ideas. You guys all had some great ones. So we'll make sure the link to that OG episode is there. But striking out on his own, we're going to get a little bit more into your mother lodge, Hiram-Takoma Lodge number 10 here in the Grand Lodge of DC. I guess we could start with this question. Every master, or past master, I should say, can remember the night that they were installed as master of the lodge. What was going through your mind that night, and how was it different the night that you watched your successor be installed as master of Hiram-Takoma or HTX?
That's an interesting question. Um, I think a lot of it was obviously my wife was there, a bunch of folks, and I kept thinking to myself, because I had this grandiose plan of, my speech and different things and how I was going to move around the room, and so that was kind of like going through my mind, and I kept telling myself, "Don't f this up, don't f this up, don't f this up," and guess what? I effed it up.
Nice. Bad
Yeah.
or just enough for you to know?
Well, so I had a speech. I had it written on my phone. Um, just talking points, and the phone was in my wife's purse, and I couldn't find it. Not realizing, where's my phone? Where's my phone? And but I ad libbed it for the most part, and it worked out. But I missed a few points here and there. Pointers, things I wanted to mention. I didn't get around to doing them. So, but all in all, I thought it was okay. It could have been
Mm.
better. Yeah.
So that was going in. What about coming out?
Um, I'll be honest. I There's a couple of things happening in Lodge that it was more about I'm ready to get out of here,
Mm.
right? Um, but looking back on it now, since it's been a few weeks, couple months now, um, I I've left the lodge in a very good state, and I should have been very proud of that. But there were a couple of you know inside family matters that kind of you know sort of put me off
Yeah.
a lot, and to be honest, I was just kind of like ready to get out of there, just to get away from it. But looking at it now, it wasn't as big of a deal as I made it. Well, not I didn't make it a big deal, but it's as it appeared initially.
Yep. And we can get to that later and talk about
Yeah,
it as much as you
sure.
want, but just for some perspective, like the whole idea of doing my year in the East. This is a one episode every season. I started it a couple years ago. I talk with a past master and they reflect on what it was like during that year. We talk about the excitement that you felt going in that night. For me,
Mhm.
I cried like a I barely made it through my speech going in. I couldn't believe it, man. Like somewhere inside, I started seeing all the ghosts and the faces of the brothers
Interesting.
that had been a part of, my Masonic career, and I just got overwhelmed with emotion. And I'm not a big crier
Nice.
like that, but oh, dude, I had to take a couple pauses. Like I was like, please don't record. My wife is sitting there
Yeah, and
recording,
of
and I'm
course,
like, put
everyone
the
is recording, of course.
fucking phone down. Jesus. So that was going in, and then coming out, I had a little bit of, I had a tinge of jealousy, just a tinge, because the brother who succeeded me,
Yeah,
was our good friend, worshipful brother Sam Chin. He's probably
yeah,
my best Masonic friend in the Grand Lodge of DC, and I was just jealous because I wanted to do another year. I enjoyed being master so much that I just
interesting.
didn't want to let it go. But I knew that it was my time to step aside and let somebody else in there. But I'd be lying if it's a little part of me was like, man, I could have done 2 years. I could have done
Yeah,
another year. Dude, I could have done 4. I loved being master of the lodge. There are parts of
wow,
it that I didn't like, but that was minimized compared to, heavily outweighed by the parts that I loved
absolutely,
about being
yeah,
master.
yeah.
So we'll get into a
I
little
echo
bit of
that.
that tonight,
I
but
echo that.
yeah, it's an interesting experience, and kind of, as I wanted to mention, like, this whole talking to a past master every year to get their perspective is for our listener who's either getting ready to go into that chair, the big
Yeah.
chair in lodge, or is thinking about it. It started off from an episode that I did with a past master on why be master of your lodge. So I
Okay.
guess we could start with that question right there. Like, why should every brother, or any brother who's listening to this, or that you talk to, why should
Yeah.
they want to be master of their lodge if they haven't been already?
Yeah, that's an excellent question because it took me a while to figure that out for myself. Like, why do I even want to be a master, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, for me, there were a lot of things and that sort of played into that. So we can start with the very basic part of that, which is, you know, I sort of went through the like all of the seats, right? Starting off as a junior steward, and so it was just my time, right? That's the very basic part of it. But then deep down, doing the research and all of it is, I I pretty much realized that through my years that Hiram-Takoma has been led by men of stature, right? Like giants, and not just in our lodge, but folks that sort of represent, uh, the entire Washington D.C. Grand Lodge. All right. So from the folks from the master who was part of the reason why you know the Grand Lodge in DC got integrated, who is really from our lodge, right?
Mm-hmm.
Being one of the first to welcome African Americans in lodge and to sort of work with Prince Hall and all of that. It's like just listening to stories and seeing these images of these masters, portraits of these masters in our lodge made me want to be a part of that, right? To leave that legacy of these are people who made a difference. And so again, I started off with, yeah, I'm up, right? But then as I went through the journey, it got deeper and deeper that I wanted to be a part of this history.
Mm. What was your progressions? Which chairs did you sit in leading up to the big chair in the East?
So I sat in all of them, right? Uh, I started, like I said, with a junior steward, senior steward, yeah. So I was
Wow.
actually, I believe I was the last one to have sat in every seat in
Mm.
Hiram
For a
Tacoma.
full year.
Or yeah, for 4 years. So I went through the progression. What was that? 5, 6 years? Yeah, all of
Jeez.
it. Yep.
Okay. So I would say that time, not like a prison sentence, but the time that you put into those chairs, I would say that was probably pretty useful by the time you got to the East. Like, not only did you know every
Absolutely.
single member, but there's a pretty good chance that you could fumble your way through opening and closing, even if you didn't know all the parts.
Yeah, yeah, it was right. I didn't, to be fair, I didn't get an appreciation for that until I got in the East or was, you know, preparing for the East, right?
Hold on just
And
a second.
sure.
Anybody that went to one of your meetings appreciated that you went through all of those chairs, Eddie. We thank you for that.
Why? Thank you, thank you. That's high praise. I appreciate that. Yeah, no, it's um, So, as you know, one of my mentors, the biggest one of all, is Chip Mahaney. And Chip and I will always talk. And one of the things that Chip mentioned or will always say is you have a different appreciation of the East if you've sat in all those seats, right?
Hmm.
Because you get to see everything from the ground up. And, that's one of the truest words I've heard anyone say to me because, yeah, you truly get to appreciate what it means. Um, and a lot of it comes into play during degree work, right? Understanding nuances of things, words said here and there, and what it means, and then the seats, and the movements and all of that. And I'm extremely appreciative that I went through that. Now, I'm I'll be the first to admit there are brothers who may have the opportunity to step up because they have to step up. By all means, please take that. However, if you have an opportunity to start from the junior deacon seat in every seat, I highly recommend it.
Mm, yeah, yeah. I jumped a couple chairs. We have a few extra chairs in New York. I was able to skip past those, but I would say the more time, and I did 3 years or three times through the junior wardens, twice in New York and once in the DC area. The more time you can spend in lodge, you
Yeah,
can tell the guys that have been there. They're so much more comfortable. We're in the East. The formalities, they understand that, but it's also the how you carry yourself during the meeting, between the gavels, so to speak, where you've got the business, but you just look at that guy and you're like, look, he is comfortable there. He's a
yeah,
leader. He's getting
yeah,
up. He's walking around the lodge. Like he owns the room and he's very comfortable with himself. And I'm always impressed with brothers that have that type of demeanor. Let's talk about advice because I'm sure, geez, almost 8 years of going through those other chairs to get to the one in the East. You probably heard a lot of stuff from guys. Was there anything that stuck out that you look back now and go, well, he kind of knew what he was talking about, or that was just complete crap?
yeah. I mean, um, I honestly can't recall a single one, but to be fair, I heard a lot of good advice, um, you know, on my journey to the East. One Actually, there is one that sticks out, and which it took me a while to understand the meaning of that, right? And that advice was this: every single person who joined masonry has a different motivation. Each person has his own motivation for becoming a mason. All right, and I cannot recall which brother actually shared that with me. All right, and and that was pretty much the gist of the advice, right? It's like, all right, what is that supposed to mean to me? But going through it all, especially when I was, excuse me, the senior warden, I started to question different people, right? Different brothers and their dedication and their motivation to lodge. Like, why isn't this person doing this? Or how come this person isn't doing it the way that I feel they should be doing it?
Mm,
And then ultimately, when I got to the East and started having conversations with different brothers, either for some reason, folks tend to open up a little bit more to you when you're in the East versus when you're not. Somehow it works out that way. And conversing with these brothers, I realized that, yeah, they have different motivations, right? And who am I to judge whatever their motivation is? And the more time I spend trying to understand who people are and what their motivations are, you know, it sort of helps me become a better leader to support them in whatever purpose they have for becoming a Mason, as opposed to judging them for not walking in my footsteps. And like I said, it took me a while to realize that, but ultimately, once I got that, I believe I became a better leader. And ultimately, I feel like our lodge got better for it.
mm. One of the things I love about you is, I'm going to go back to that mastering your trestle board episode because I think so much is true to the adage of, you either plan for success or you fail to plan. And there's no doubt that you weren't going to have a successful year because I saw your trestle board. And I know you visited a lot of lodges and you took in people's opinion in the years leading up to becoming master of Red
Absolutely.
Lodge.
Yes, sir.
So you were ready to go. What defines your year as being a success? What was the thing that you're like, yeah, I can look back and say I had a successful year in the East?
It's several things, right? I'll give you two if you don't mind. The first, when I made a phone call, right? I initially sent an email, and then I picked up the phone and called Right Words for Brother Andrew Hammond, and asked him in person if he would be kind enough to do a program for me.
Mm-hmm.
And he said yes. And he said, but for you, and but for you only. You know, and he didn't specify anything else, but said those words. And we've talked a few times, but Right Words for Andrew Hammond is one of those guys that I have a lot of respect for, right? Because for him, it's about the learning, the craft, understanding what the craft is all about. And I really, really wanted him to do that program you did with him because I wanted him to speak to what it meant to him and, like what it takes to be who he is, right? To be able to speak to those incoming masters or master masons and be able to explain to them, like the work he puts in, his research history of the craft. And so for him to agree to do that program and I mean without hesitation, right? That to me stood out as I must be doing something right for him to agree to do my program. It's the first part. And then secondly, I've heard this from two other masters, right? Past masters of Hiram-Takoma, actually a couple of them. But I'm going to call his name here because I feel like he's one of those people that deserve a lot of credit and doesn't maybe get as much credit. Works for Brother Neil Jarvis from Hiram-Takoma Lodge. He's been around a while, right? And one of the things he said to me, he said it a few times before, and I guess maybe I never paid attention to it, but I think I started to listen to it a little bit more towards the end of my tenure, right? And especially when I was starting to get frustrated with things here and there, right? And he said to me, I've been here for a while, right? I've been in this lodge for a very long time. I've sat here and seen over 21 masters in the East. And I can tell you, you are by far one of the best masters we've ever had. So to hear that from someone like Neil Jarvis, works for Brother Neil Jarvis, who's been around, who's seen, and we've had some really good masters. I mean, you know some of them, right? You know our history. To hear that high praise from someone like Neil Jarvis further solidify my time in the East.
Yeah, no, that's special.
Stood out. Yep.
That's really special. And for the listener going, what is he talking about? This lodge program that he did with Right Worshipful Brother Andrew Hammer. Hey, don't worry. I still have my copy of the questions that Ed provided to us for his lodge program that night. And if you're a Craftsman Online Patreon subscriber, we're going to have a special subscriber extra episode. And I've saved a couple of these questions to pepper him with because it's his turn to get to answer them. Put you in the hot seat. But no, nice. that was, I would say, one of the things, as a visitor to your lodge that made it special to go there was the different styles of programming that you did. I also could easily tell, and now I get it, like a dude that sat in every single chair, of course you're going to know every brother who's at your lodge. You knew everybody. Like, that was amazing. And you would reach out to them and talk to them like, you've been best friends for years. That was fantastic. And I think the other thing was, I didn't know about some of the other drama, nor should I know about some of the drama that happens. None of us should know as visiting brothers of a lodge that, oh my gosh, there's a little conflict that's going on here. And I'd kind of like to get into that, and as delicately as you'd like to talk about it, mainly because of this fact. I mean, we're told, like, as Masons, right, that there should be no disagreement, that the only true contention is like who can best work, and you work together and agree. That's not true. We
Right.
know that when you bring a group of men, individuals, anybody together, there's going to be some conflict. But the big part about leadership is being able to provide the resolution to that. And that night when we did the, questions that you should know, things you should know as a newly raised Sublime Master Mason, one of the comments that you made, and I was like, what? And you're like, I know that there are people in my own line who don't like me. And I'm like, who doesn't like Ed? What? So to the point to that you're comfortable with it, like, we don't need all the nitty gritty details, but
Sure.
what was kind of the conflict, and what was your path to finding some resolution to it?
Yeah, absolutely. Um, I'm going to say something, and perhaps some of your listeners might question, perhaps the veracity of it. Um, I only ask that you speak to someone who's been in my lodge, right? A brother or whatever, to sort of like, if they care enough. One of the things that I did throughout my year was I never formulated an opinion or gave an opinion about anything to one brother um, that I wouldn't otherwise say in front of anyone else. Um, and obviously you've been a master, people come to you all the time and ask your opinion about certain things, certain other people. And I
Get
always say this, I always say, you know, unfortunately, I'm not willing to share my opinion with you, but I can only speak to you as a master. I will reserve my opinion until after my year in the East. And if you still care to hear my opinion, I'll be happy to share with you then. And a couple of brothers were taken aback by that and not understanding my reason for that. So the reason I did that is because I always wanted to walk on a level, always want to speak on the square, no matter who I talk to, right? And I felt like if I kept it that way, then my conversation, my interaction will always be even with every single person I deal with. No favoritism in any way. Um, but I think a lot of people didn't understand. Not a lot of people. I shouldn't say that. I think a lot of people didn't understand me, but a couple folks didn't understand that aspect of who I am, or the choice I made to not voice opinions as an individual, right? But rather to always speak as a master, even if it's in a what they thought might have been a one-on-one setting. And because of that, I think a couple of folks uh, perhaps disagreed with certain choices I made without realizing that there were a lot of thoughts and you know um, a lot of research that went into those decision making. And I said that I said, I know some of you don't like me or dislike certain choices I made or you know decisions I made, and I'll tell you this: at no point in time, even now, do I regret any of those decisions because I made them um, with consultation from folks I trusted, and that I honestly feel our loss is better for it that I made those decisions. And so that's where that came from. I made decisions that a couple of folks, were not maybe too happy with. And as a result, they, obviously talked to other folks about said things and thought I did or didn't do things. Obviously, it comes back to you some way, somehow. But again, I couldn't even express my opinion to those folks that came to me and say, this person said this and that. I couldn't tell them anything then. I simply kept it on the level to say, I appreciate, you telling me that, and simply kept my opinions to myself, but rather spoke facts and spoke to large business.
mm,
And so that's how I represented myself. That, and I've spoken to at least one other brother since, and he's I believe he feels better now, knowing why I made certain decision the way I did.
I got to give you a lot of mad respect on that one. Like I had no idea about that, and I wish it's given me something to think about, because your job as a leader is to lead people, and we're always told don't fall prey to these idle conversations on the sidelines, or the personal peaks and grudges is another term that you'll hear us use. But guys do, like I said, like we're talking with individuals and men that get together in groups, and clicking and gossip and chit chat all starts.
Absolutely.
And I think that that's a really powerful tone to set as the leader, is that you're not going to get drug into that. And then they go, oh, well, if the master's not going to put up with that and deal with that, then I'm not going to get in that either. I mean, we know people still talk and stuff, but that's amazing. I mean, the biggest challenge that that I faced was um I didn't want to do an event that the lodge wanted to do when I put my trestle
Oh,
board together. And I kind of, again, it's the strength of silence. When my trestle board went around, it was like, Brother Arcee, I'm still senior ward, and they're like, we don't see a festa board anywhere on the trestle board here. And I'm like, well,
yeah.
of course you're not. Well, you didn't put one on there. And I'm like, no, I didn't. Why not? Nobody comes to them, and they cost our lodge a lot of money. So I'm not planning on having one this year. Oh, well, what if we want to have one? Well, then I guess as a lodge, you could make a motion. Somebody could second it. We'll put a committee together. You could vote on it. We'll put a budget together. And then if you guys want to plan it, then as master of the lodge, I'm happy to entertain it and make it happen. But it's just not something that I'm planning to do. Fast forward like 3 months later, and I'm planning for a festive board, but it was to honor one of our 50-year members that was in the DC area. He's now our Fidelity Medal holder, and for people outside of the DC area, they're going to be like, "What's that?" And it's a special thing that we give to recognize one brother as kind of like the ambassador of the lodge, and also for his time of service. And it's basically a lifetime award. It stays with him until he passes. And that was the biggest challenge for me. So I would say my biggest challenge definitely paled in comparison to yours. Let me ask you this instead then. Hindsight being what it is, and I told you I was a little sad, a little bit jealous when I had to get out of the East. I didn't want to let go. What's the one thing you're like, man, I got 12 months. I did my 12 months. If I could stay for a little bit longer, I could have fixed this, or I could have addressed this. This would have been the thing I'd go back to correct if I had my chance.
It's interesting you say that, and I don't. I think you know me, but I'm not sure if all your listeners know me. I'll be completely honest with you. Nothing,
Mm,
right? And I've said this before. You've seen my trust board, you've seen my programs and all that. I had a plan B for every single program on that list. Um, and I have to give a lot of credit to the masters that came right before me. Right, there were three or four masters that came before me, and and then we had a couple of really good secretaries in Chris Galakis, Worship Brother Chris Galakis, and Right Worship Brother Bud Michaels. You know, a treasurer in Marshall Wilner. You know, because I sat in those seats, right, from a junior steward all the way up, I had a chance to get to see what works and what doesn't work in our lodge, right, in that
mm.
area. And I plan, and when I tell you, I was planning for my year since I was a senior deacon. Every program that I saw that I was very interested in, either because I visited a lodge, something I wanted to do, I wrote it down. I ran it by Chip. I ran it by a couple of folks, and got the okay. So in terms of doing differently, no, I think more of would be where I would go with that. So I wouldn't necessarily do anything differently, right? But one of the things that I would like to do more of is I started this journey of trying to get Hiram-Takoma Lodge back on track of being one of the best ritualistic lodges, right? I was told, and a ton of folks brag, New Jarvis being one of them, saying every single member in Hiram-Takoma could recite just about any line from any degree, anytime,
Mm.
as you needed them, right? I see Manila Lodge being very similar to that now, right? And it was my goal to try to get us on track to become what we used to be. Um, you know, personally, I think it's a lot of fun being, participating in degree work, helping out other lodges. And one, you get to meet more folks, but in the process of, you know, doing the rituals and all of that, you get to learn a lot more and you have a deeper understanding of the meaning behind words. Not just words you say, but you have a true understanding of those words. And I was trying to get our lodge back to that. I think I succeeded in at least getting some of our newer members, Master Masons, learning some of those things right away. And I'm hoping that we can continue that. And I'll be honest, to be fair, visiting our lodge this past at our last stated, I'm very impressed with the current master and the work he's doing with that.
Mm.
Obviously he has a different approach to it, but he's supporting the idea of these guys learning new things and stepping up and getting the words right. So I'm extremely excited about that.
Yeah, me too. Um, I'm going to pivot to a question about the future and the fingerprints and the impact that you made, and do so by virtue of a quote. But I'm just racking my brain because our YouTube live streamer is going to see this before May. But anybody that might listen to this on a podcast afterwards, his title changes a little bit. But he's Most Worshipful Brother Stephen Adam Rubin. He's the current Grandmaster before his term ends in May of the Grand Lodge of New York. And after May, he'll be, oh, geez, just a past Grandmaster. But in his election address about 2 years ago, he stated a line that I have carried in my heart for a long time, and that we are only stewards of the East for the time that we are elected to serve, and that our labor should provide a foundation for future leaders. And I really took that to charge when I heard those words as I was, into my term and getting ready for that at St. John's. So if you look back over the 12 months that you served as master of HTX, where can we see your fingerprints on the future of Hiram-Takoma Lodge?
It's a good question. Um, and then it kind of goes back to what Neil Jarvis said to me, right? Like you're leaving a legacy. Um, and the following to that was you may not see it, you know, the first couple of years once you leave, but I guarantee you 5+ years from now, you will see that. And,
Mm.
you know, initially I was wondering what he was talking about, but I think one of the things that I'm hoping comes out of this in terms of a legacy for me is the the dedication that it took, right? That sort of like my approach to business, right? Where um, I put in the work, the effort to make sure that things, to make sure that we always had a plan B, to make sure that we learn lines, to make sure that, you know, we were always, we were getting back to what HTX used to be, right? Learning the lines, the rituals, and things like that. So when I'm seeing these new brothers, newly raised brothers, and they're able to stand there and recite things and truly almost sit in for any officer, I think I'm hoping that that continues, and I'm hoping that, you know, 4 or 5 years from now, I can see one of those newly raised brothers in the East. And I
Mm.
think that to me would be one of my greatest legacy.
So by the time this episode airs, we're recording it in mid-February. You will have had some time. And I got to ask you, are you planning on sitting in the South or in the North at HTX meetings now?
That's a good question. I actually sat in the South the last visit, and only because there was another past master who also showed up because we planned to show up together, and he happens to be sitting in the South. Um, it's tradition for HTX that past masters sit in the North. And I think I plan to carry on that tradition, sitting in the North as
All right.
much as I possibly can.
You guys got that big comfy chair in the North
We
too. It's a
sure
nice
do.
one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Except the
So
middle one is for Neil Jarvis. You can't sit in that. That's yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't see his name on it yet. Well, this is the toughest question, and it's the least favorite question for past masters to be asked, because they usually ask you this when they know your successor has been elected and is waiting to be installed. People will
Yeah.
come up and be like, "I know, I did it. Hey, Ed, what's next, man? What are you going to do after you get out of the East? What's your plan?" So it's been 2 months since you've been quote unquote unemployed.
Yeah. Yeah. Unemployed. Right.
Are you enjoying your retirement, or are you thinking about what you could do?
Um, I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying it. I mean, like you said, part of me do miss that, you know, that type A personality, always want to be in charge type thing.
Mm.
But I'm enjoying it. A little bit more time with the family. That's important, right?
Who are
You
they?
know,
The people that live at your house, right there. I've heard I have one of those too. Yeah.
yeah, they're around. I mean, I think
Yeah.
they're around somewhere. From time to time, I slide food under the door or something like that. No, but my wife is gracious enough to support everything. And even now, if I needed to go large, she will pretty much, make do and, you know, accommodate. Um,
That's the thing. We got to give her some mad props. Plus, I've seen your son, your little guy. He's a cool little dude. Like, you've
Thank you.
got a young son, a beautiful wife. You guys moved throughout the whole process of this. Like,
Yes,
on the personal side, you had a lot going on in your life on top
I
of what you
did.
had to do at Lodge. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, I mean, you and I talk about this personally, right? But, just for your listeners, one of the things that I've learned in my lifetime is to never make excuses for anything I do, right? It was a choice to be mastered, right? It's a volunteer position. Yes, I was elected, but it was still my choice to take on this endeavor. So if I volunteer for something and I put my name in the hat and I became a master, at no point in time was I going to allow anything else to you know, to allow me to not succeed in that role or to take away from being the best master that I could be.
Mm.
And going into it, my wife and I had a really long discussion, right? And we talked about it. And, you know, and like I said, because I've sat in all those seats, I knew for the most part what to expect. And I ran it by her and asked her and said, hey, this is what it's going to be like. Especially during certain seasons, I'm going to be gone quite a bit. And are you going to be okay with that? And to my wife's credit, she stepped up and said, yep, I totally support whatever you're doing, right? So go for it. So knowing that and preparing for that, I wouldn't allow things like, yeah, move into a new home, me trying to start a business, all of that get in the way of being successful and being the best master that I could be because I worked and prepared for it.
Mm. One of the
So,
things that, yeah.
sorry, I was going to say, so back to my plans for moving forward. Like, honestly, I wanted to learn more, right? The craft I enjoy. I've gained a few sort of like, I've gained knowledge from where we are from a Blue Lodge. I need, there, there's more to masonry than just the Blue Lodge, right? So I'm trying to get more. I'm trying to learn more, learn from some of the scholars of masonry. So I'm trying to do more research to see how far I can go in this craft. That's sort of
Mm.
my, that's what I will hope. I want to gain more knowledge.
Nice, very nice.
Yep.
Well, be careful who you say that to, because
I know. Trust me, I know.
they might get you some more jewelry and a couple hats to wear if you're not too careful.
Oh, I'm, I'm not stepping out there too soon. I'm just trying to learn.
All right. It's your secret's safe with me. No one listens. Well, it's one of the things I do love about the Grand Lodge of DC, the District of Columbia, is that it's a federal territory. I love, telling people that's only 7 miles wide. It's really hard to get lost in DC. Yes, possible. Hard too.
Yeah.
It's a tight group of brothers. And I felt like the year that you were in the East, it was like, when you graduate and the class behind you is cooler than your class and they're tighter and they're more fun. And you're like, man, I'm kind of jealous of those guys too.
Yeah.
Um, Talk a little bit to the Masters Club that kind of
Oh
existed
man,
and how much you guys came to each other's aid.
dude.
That was special.
Oh, I listen, and yeah, I sound like an old record now, right? But like I said, sitting in every seat. I've honestly never seen it, right? Like just the close connection, the ties that we all had, the Masters of 2025. Never saw it before, and I don't know if it's happening this year, right? Just
No,
talking
it's
to a
not.
couple of, yeah,
But you got
talking,
to talk about it. Like you guys all went
yeah,
to each other's lodges.
absolutely. So the sort of like the genesis of that was Chip Mahaney's and a couple guys, right, who started this. It started from the MWA, right, Master Wardens Association, where everyone sort of like got together and made a pact to say, you know, we should start planning these things. And one of the things that we talked about quite a bit was, hey, we should talk about different programs you guys are going to do, perhaps share and do those things. So from that, going to those various meetings, meeting these people, exchanging numbers, um, you know, so we put in the work from like junior warden to senior warden, right? When we went to those meetings, um, and we just started like build that rapport, just starting to get to know each other. So one of the first people I met in that area, actually he came to visit my lodge before I even went to one of those meetings, was my brother Paul Cedro from
Mm.
East Gate. He was one of the first ones that I met before I even attended those meetings. And then obviously, he's a very popular guy, right?
He's my
Um,
prince. Yes.
yeah, exactly, the Prince. Um, so he introduced me to all the folks he knew, and then we would all talk about things that we wanted to do together. Then you meet different people like Worship Brother Nathan Williams from D Colonial. I met him, and then it was just instant. Yeah, that's kind of cool. We should try that. And so meeting these people and conversing with them and sharing sort of like tips about things and what we plan to do, it led to this openness, right? I've never seen brothers or masters willing to share as much as our group of people. Because one of the first things I did, I fire off my list of programs, trustable to every master. Like, here's all the stuff I plan to do. If any of you have programs that are similar to mine, you're interested in collaborating, let me know. And before
Mm.
you know it, other people were sending theirs to me. It's like, oh, I'm planning to do this, I'm planning to do that. So by then, it's like you knew who was doing what program, and something you were interested in, you could say, "Oh yeah, I'll come to that." Case in point, I had we did the chili cook-off. We did, right. We had, I think, 7 Sin Masters attend, and 5 of them entered into the competition. So I thought that was like great. And so based on that, we were all just, what program are you doing? Great, I'll be there. Or if you needed someone to sit in or do something, you just pick up the phone and say, hey, I need your help with something. For instance, what's your brother Henry hit me up. It's like, dude, I had a last minute cancellation on the program. Can you show up and do something? I'm like, yeah, dude, whatever. I'll spitball something. And it
Mm.
turned out it was a really good, successful program. And he loved it. His group loved his Sojourner, and they loved it. And this program was supposed to be like 15 30 minutes 15 20 minutes conversation. 10, it ended up being like an hour and a half because his folks had tons of questions with the program I did, and that was fun. You know what I mean? So we made it a point to support each other no matter what, and we're still friends to this day. Some of those guys are really good friends of mine. We check up on each other. Doc, Marcelin, he hits me up almost every week to check in on me.
Lycian. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, I mean, it's we put in the work prior to our year, and that continued throughout the year.
It's one of the things that I would challenge our listener. I mean, the Grand Lodge of DC. So DC, we established federal territory, not that big. It's only 7 miles across. There are 40 at the time of this podcast recording. There are 43 lodges in the Grand Lodge of DC with one under dispensation, so 44. Three of those lodges are in the Grand Lodge of Lebanon, so they are out of
Mm,
the country, right? So now you're down to 41 that you can go travel and visit. And it's not that all 41 of the masters of all of the lodges during Ed's term kind of had this pact, that this friendship, but enough of them did to where
enough.
those of us that were past masters are like, well, I was friends with like 2 or 3 guys. Like this is almost the whole crew, and they
Yeah.
would travel to each other's installations. They were part of each other's events and meetings. So if you have less than 41 lodges in your district, in your jurisdiction, and you're listening to this conversation, you're on notice, bro. Like, do it. And it doesn't take that much. It's
It's easy.
just
It's
this thing
easy.
called a phone call and
Yeah.
being in person and being present.
It's very easy to do, right? Um, One of the things that I think we need to get out of our own heads is that we have this tendency of saying, well, I don't want to impose, I don't want to interfere. You know, with our group, hey, what are you guys doing? Do you need help or anything? Right? Just being able to pick up the phone and call anyone anytime. And even if you needed help, hey, I need someone to sit in here, or we're doing a degree work, I need X, Y, and Z. And I was one of those people who would just blast out an email to the entire group. And before, before I shut down my computer, I would get like 5+ responses from different people. Yeah, I'll be there. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like, that's unprecedented to me. Like, I never heard of it prior to sitting in the East. And
Yep.
so I hope it continues at some point, right? But yeah, it was amazing, man. It's great.
I got 3 questions left. 2 of them are from your October stated loaded questions game that we played. So be ready for that. But this will be our fun question before we get to the heavy ones. Because we got to do it. You know,
Yeah.
you're a past master now, so you have to give. What is that gem, that Ed Freeman past master advice that you wish that you had, or that you were just going to freely dispose to anyone who asks now?
Yeah. So it kind of goes back to what I meant when I said different folks have different motivation. Um, so I'm gonna get slightly heavy, and then to answer the question. Uh, Masonry is not above the fray with respect to politics, right? There's that. It's a lot of that in there. Um, my advice to anyone who is a leader, or who wants to get in the East, is to understand that no matter what decision you make, no matter who you talk to, no matter how you talk to them, if you're sitting in the East, you will always be speaking as a master. Just think about that. Everything you say, everything you do will be judged as a master. So because of that, always, always carry yourself as the master in any conversation you have, in anything you do.
I'm just going to give that time some space so that they can just take that in, because it's like a charge, man. We need to add that to
Yeah.
the installation. That is so powerful. All right, you asked me these 2 questions along with a list of others, but I found these to be 2 that were really, really good, and I want to get your take on them. The first
Sure.
one was, what advice would you give an entered apprentice or newly raised master mason?
Yeah. So learn, right? Learning means a lot, right? I mean, it's somewhat of a loaded statement when I say that, but when I say take the time to learn, understand the words that are being said, right? Make sure you speak to the folks who are saying them, and try to get an understanding of what it means, because you will appreciate masonry more if you learn and understand things better, right? These are things I didn't realize. It's just I sort of went through the motion of being a mason. Like, oh yeah, those are just words. Um, those words have meaning. Every single word that is spoken in lodge, from the time you close those doors, from the time you start to the time you uh, gavel to end lodge, every single word has meaning. Try your best to learn them, because you get to appreciate masonry a lot more if you understand those words.
Can I ask you a question about that? You're the
Sure.
first person that has made that comment. And I'm just wondering if that point that you made about how the words, especially the opening and closing of the lodge, I've always thought that in each of the chairs that you sit in the lodge, you get a different perspective of the lodge. And since
100%.
you've sat in
Yes.
them all, so is it that from the chairs? Is it the brother and how it changes every year? That it's some other man who is saying the same words that maybe you said or that you're going to say? Like, what makes those words so powerful to you?
So it's for me is every, every single word from every perspective means something, but put together, it tells a complete story, is the complete picture, right, of a Blue Lodge. So you would do well to understand them because then you get to appreciate what a Blue Lodge really is. And not a lot of people get to do that. And I'm guilty of it. And the only reason I can now say this with a lot of confidence is because I've had really good mentors, like I said, Chip Maheenan being one of them, and being part of the ritual, doing degree work and stepping through lines. And especially when I fumble things and go to Chip and he explained things to me and say, just think about it. When you say this, what it really means. And when you start to get an appreciation for it, the meaning of it, then it's not difficult to memorize the words anymore because you now understand the full story. So it makes sense.
You know, I was going to circle this one on the questions that you asked because I'm like, there's a reason why he's asking this question in October at one of his meetings. But I loved it, and I want you to have a chance to answer the question and for the listener to hear it. How can we as brothers strengthen and support one another more effectively?
Right. So that question came about because so to just give you a little bit of history, it's sort of like the genesis of it. Um, when I was, having one of my really shitty days, right? And it was a
just one of them, yeah.
yeah, it was a bad day, man. And I showed up to lodge, and going through the motions of just doing things and just get this over with. And then I started having conversations with different people, and realized that, man, what I thought was a shitty um, day was not as bad as other people.
Yep.
You know what I mean? So it's
Yep.
like, man, like this is, I'm having, first, second world problems here when people are having deeper issues that they're
Mm-hmm.
dealing with, and I'm crying about a paper cut, right? And so in that moment, what it did for me was trying to get a better sense of who my brothers were and trying to understand who they are. And it makes sense for me to really get to learn, to try to get to know them, right? Learn who they are and how can I support you, right? And in terms me supporting you, I'm helping myself along the way, right? Because I'm saying how to deal with certain situations and how to handle certain things. But I thought in that moment, when I learned about certain things, certain people, and some of the things they were going through, it made me realize that I need to do more. How do I ask, hey man, what's going on with you? How are you? How's your family? You know, um, believe it or not, one of the people that actually do this very well in our lodge, Martin, Santa, he does. I have to give Martin credit. Martin does a very good job of that.
No, I'm just thinking the listeners like Santa is a member of
Oh
his
yeah,
lodge.
yeah,
We call
yeah,
him Santa because obviously he looks like one, but this big
yes,
he shows up
big,
every meeting on a motorcycle. He's
he is
amazing.
one.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So hopefully I answered your question, but yeah.
Yeah. No, I love it because when I'm having some of my favorite days are when I'm like, I've never been one of the guys who I'm like, oh shit, I got lunch tonight. Oh, I guess I'm gonna go to I always go, yes, I got lunch tonight. I can't wait. I love going to lodges. Sometimes visiting other lodges, I'm like, well, I really have to go do this, or I should go do this. But my own lodge, and I hope every brother looks forward to going to visit, lodge and be with their brothers. When I have a shit day, as you say, like the first and only people I go to talk to, pretty much in this order, is usually my wife when she comes home and she's like, "How was your day?" And I'm like, "Well, it wasn't really a great one, and here's why." And she's like, "Oh shit, he's gonna
Right.
go have a few drinks and smoke a cigar tonight." And I'm like, "Yep." And I'm gonna probably be on the phone for 2 hours talking to my brothers about this because they're the ones that I can tell anything to. And
Yeah.
they not only listen to me, but to your point, like, dude, they give it to you straight. And I love that about it. They're like, well, maybe you could be a little bit less of an asshole. And I'm like, yeah, you know what? Maybe I could. I could try there.
I've gotten that. I've
Yeah.
gotten that.
Or it's like, dude, that's just awful. And I don't know what to say, but I'm just here to listen to anything that you have to say after this. And I love talking to them. And I love getting to be that guy eventually. And that's when it's a two-way street when they start calling you. And they're just like, hey, how was your day today? And they're not calling you to check on you. It's because they got something they need to say, and you're the one they want to talk to it about.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a cool feeling. Yeah.
It is.
All right, you have been awesome, by the way, on his Riding Solo podcast episode. Last time he was carrying the team. No, just kidding.
No. Dude,
it was a great team.
Hitters. Definitely heavy hitters.
Dude, your whole year, the 2025, I'll go on record of saying it, the 2025 DC Past Masters, man, you guys were an all-star team. Like that was a formidable leadership force. And, moving on and moving out of the DC area now, I have got my eye on many of you to continue your path. I'll just say that.
I agree.
But I'll get you out of here on this question. So outside of, start planning early, because you did mention that, like you started looking at the East and what you wanted to do when you were a deacon, which is awesome. I always tell people, and you mentioned it as well, like listen to every word of advice or wise counsel that you may get, take everybody's opinion. The advice that specifically now for brother senior or brother junior warden who are sitting there, maybe knees knocking a little sweaty palms, got the racing thoughts in their head. They're listening to this episode and they're like, oh, next year's going to be my time in the East. What's the advice you have to kind of soothe and get them ready for that transition? What do they need to know?
Yeah. So one of the biggest things you need to understand is you don't have to be alone in this, right? That's the biggest piece of it, where everyone sits in the ease and think it's my responsibility and I must. Yeah, heavy is the head that wears the crown. I get that, but it doesn't have to be just you, and that's what lodge is, right? Yes, you get to make the final decisions in certain things. I get it, but utilize the resources that you have, and that makes your life a lot easier. I was fortunate. I was extremely fortunate to have had a really good secretary in Worship Brother Chris Galakis. And when I tell you, I can simply say, this is the program I want to do, or this is what I want to do, and sit back, and the rest of it logistically is handled, right? And in speaking to him after, me thanking him, and he's like, "No, you made life easier because you had a plan. You came to me, and that's great." But that the idea of it for me was just people you can trust, and being willing to trust that those people are going to come through for you, right? So it doesn't have to be on you and just you. That's the first, that's the biggest piece of it. But listen, still things you see in other lodges, but that requires you to visit other lodges, right? Meaning you visit lodges and you see them do something, you say, that is really cool. If I'm in the East someday, I would like to implement something, maybe that or something similar to that. And I did a lot of that. But here's the kicker for me. I typically went to the master and whoever it was and said, I really enjoy that. I'm going to steal it. And there are times where I end up inviting those masters to my lodge to be the one leading said effort. So not only was I inviting a guest, and they would come and bring some of their members, but I was implementing something that they sort of like, took on in their lodge, right? And it's flattery, right? It's you flatter them by repeating or doing something they did in the past. So it doesn't have to be necessarily original in terms of what you're planning to do.
Mm.
So, take the things that you see that works and improve on the things that maybe now that doesn't work so well, right? But trust people and work with different folks out there, and it doesn't have to be on you and on you alone.
It's funny you say that, dude, because you did that with me.
Yes.
One of the things that I started doing at St. John's, and I'm a sucker for traditions. So I love the tradition, or it used to be a tradition, that the president of the would leave a letter in the top drawer of the desk of the president in the Oval Office to the incoming president, then be a handwritten note. And it started with George H.W. Bush, and it continued for some terms, and hopefully it will pick back up. And so my thought was, let's do printed 3-ring binders and in DC, the elected officers are the deacons, wardens, and of course master. But it would, as well as it being an officer handbook and keeping track of like the agenda, the minutes, the trestle board, all the things that were going on, but they would leave an outgoing note to their successor, knowing that who that brother was going to be, with a piece of advice. And I was like, well, let's see if I can start this tradition. My mother-in-law did it in Schenectady. It'd be kind of nice to see if we could get something like this started. And this year I actually saw them, doing the notebook handoff. I thought that was pretty cool. You took that idea and you're like, I'm going to take it up a degree. You printed out your own nice Hiram-Takoma notebooks. And was that one of the traditions that you've seen continue and carry on?
I haven't had a chance to converse deeply with our
you could have just said yes, Ed. We were going out on a high note.
I know. I don't, because you know me well. I don't want to give false information. So it's the one that I will hope continue. But we have a very, very capable and intelligent master who's been there before. So perhaps he's doing it slightly different. But it's the tradition that I'm hoping continues, because I tell you what, there are a lot of things that I learned, because unlike most people, right, I'm not one of these people who guess. I'll pick up the phone and call. Like, I talk to the master before me, the 2-3 masters before me. I ask questions. Unfortunately, not a lot of us are comfortable enough to do that. So having something where someone can write you some notes and say, here are some things I tried and didn't try, I think that helps the folks who are not as confident or comfortable just conversing or having that phone call.
Mm. So I know it's only been 2 months, so keep that in mind as a past master. But does your son, I know he's a little guy, does he ride a bike yet by himself?
Yeah, he does actually. Yeah.
Okay.
6
and
years old.
Are you guys, these new kids these days, we don't have robot parents, but you're still running behind, holding onto the seat, and you let him go and he pedals away. Is that still
No. So thankfully he did not like the sound of the training wheels. So he's been riding 2 wheels since he was 4. He's 6 now. So
damn. Yeah. Okay. All right.
Yeah, he's like, he picked things up if he doesn't like something, he fixes it.
So I kind of equated it recently. I haven't shared this with too many people, but I had that moment, that pride that comes when you're a dad and you see your son just pedaling away on his own too.
Yeah.
And he doesn't crash into a curb or a bush or a car. Like he goes. It happened at my lodge at St. John's here in DC, and they were able to plan an event and do something like all by themselves. The other lodge brothers stood up, and I could just stand back as the proud past master and be like, my boys don't need me anymore. That's food for thought for our next conversation. What life as a past master.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I'm sure.
But welcome to the club.
Yeah, no, this is it's a great club to be a part of. Right? It's I'm amongst giants, so extremely happy to be part of this club.
Nice.
A little bit sad, but
it is a little sad. In talking to you, it kind of makes me want to do it again. I just don't want anybody to hear me say that out loud. Just saying.
The wife is not listening, is she?
No, she's already banned it. Worshipful brother Edmond Freeman, past master, Hiram-Takoma Lodge number 10, the Grand Lodge of the District of Columbia. Thank you so much for your time again on this episode of the Craftsman Online Podcast.
Absolutely. My genuine pleasure being here. Thanks for the invitation.